Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hour number 2 on the precipice of another great show that they're saying right now on ESPN Radio.
That's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying.
Everybody
14:10
driving
AM.
your car right now in Dayton, seeing the landmark,
Yep.
seeing the Dayton Dragons field.
That's right.
Seeing the, I don't know what the basketball
Wright
arena's called.
Brothers Museum.
Wright Brothers Museum.
That's right.
2 hours away from Toledo if you want to go drive to Toledo.
That's right.
What else is in Dayton?
You're in the heart of it all. You're in the heart of it all.
The heart of it all.
And here's the thing, is that this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, is that we were just talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, and the reason they're talking about this being such a great show, they couldn't quite pick the segment out which one made it the best, but they were trying to figure out maybe it was the headlines, maybe it was Mike Ford, maybe it was the Bengals logo, but if it's not those three things, it's definitely going to be this one. And that is, obviously there was a Cincinnati Enquirer does what they usually do, which they do a good job of it. They got the fan base and or the city riled up a little bit about how no longer should tax dollars go towards the funding of sports facilities. Now, I do think this is a relatively reasonable conversation to have around what is it exactly that should be here. But the article suggested that the city would be better off with apartments where basically Paycor Stadium is. And clearly the folks that obviously enjoy Cincinnati Bengals football did not appreciate that. I know where Reed stands on this for all intents and purposes.
I feel like I've got a pretty nuanced take on this whole thing.
Yeah, you have
I go on both sides about this.
right. Someone called that flip-flop in the political world, which isn't a bad thing sometimes as long as you can rationalize it and have a reasonable discussion. But it seems now that what will happen, I mean, like you get to where you have a really wealthy owners, right? And most are billionaires, maybe not the ones that live in this city, but you have really wealthy owners that try to use the leverage of what it means for their franchise to be in the city. You have a lot of fans that have grown up loving this certain brand.
Right.
So you try to leverage that against the city, right? You try to say, you know what? If we're not able to get this done or XYZ done, then we'll just pack up and leave. And it's happened before. It's happening currently now. But the question ultimately comes down to is when they do leverage that, what's right and what's wrong? What's fair and what's unfair? And do you think we're going to get ourselves in another position, I guess, without going too far down the beaten path here, that owners are going – do you think owners are going to cave in to the idea that no longer their stadiums are going to get paid for, or do you think it's just going to be one of those situations now where it's going to be like musical chairs in professional sports with some ownership group saying, you know what? If we can't get what you guys are asking for, there's somewhere else that wants us, and they'll take care of us. So we're going to take off. See you later. Have a nice life. Do you think that's going to happen? And I'm not trying to root for that. No, I'm not trying to put that out in the air in Cincinnati, but it's something that's coming.
Do I think if cities stop paying for stadiums, do I think some owners will take that advantage and go like, well, another city will pay for it and leave? Yes. Do I think if that happens on a regular occurrence, that will overall hurt the product of the NFL, which seems almost untouchable? Yes, I also believe that because, I mean, if teams are moving all the time, you lose trust in what you got. When it comes to the stadium thing, and I see people putting this in the chat right now, like, how does it make sense that a business as safe as owning an NFL franchise by billionaire owners, like, why is the city responsible for building that? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why are you using tax dollars to build a stadium? And the old argument always used to be, well, we're making this investment as a city because if you put a stadium down there, it'll bring all sorts of money. Bars will pop up, people want to come into that. That used to be the argument. And then study after study after study after study has shown that to not be the case, that really when you build a stadium off tax dollars, it really doesn't drive up money towards the city. No different than like if you look at other, like Columbus doesn't, I mean, I know they have Ohio State, but like every big city has a downtown area similar to the banks. Every single city does that. It really doesn't change anything. Really doesn't change anything at all. Now this is where I get a little nuance. So like the math doesn't make sense, and really the idea that the government should pay for a billionaire who has the money to build a stadium should pay to increase their business's venue or whatever you want to call it. Now here's the nuance. I don't think that a city always has to make like decisions. Like sometimes, like it's their job as a city, as a government, is to make citizens' lives better. And if citizens want a new stadium to go to cheer on their favorite football team, then they shouldn't be worried about, hey, is this a good investment? Sometimes you make those. I've made the analogy here in Hamilton. I'm in here from Hamilton. We have this River's Edge concert series that could be a big old hole in the tax sheet for the city of Hamilton. But I'm okay with losing money there because it makes a lot of citizens happy, and that's kind of the nuanced take I have.
As long as, and I mean, this is where you get into politics, you get into government. Nobody really wants to talk that on a sports talk show for the most part, so we're not going to get into the weeds of all this. But I do think that that's a fair, valid point. You would have the pushback from folks saying, well, I'm just going to use your example because you brought it up. Not that it's an indictment on what you think or anything like that, but like you could have some people that would push back and say, well, the reason you like the River's Edge concert series and you're okay with that being a deficit in the budget is because you enjoy it personally and you want other people to help pay for that. That would be the same argument that what some people would make about the stadium, right? Is like, well, if you like it, then just go to the games, pay for your tickets, and then it should all add up.
Yeah,
it should all add up. So you
don't
don't have to worry about
baby.
it. The only thing that really the government's job is to do is make sure that there's nice roads, people are safe. All the basic means of what government's supposed to do, and
Citizens
you start to get
supposed to be happy.
Yeah, but I'm saying you start to get into the weeds of these ancillary things, and then all of a sudden, well, that's the reason tax hikes, and that's why it's a tough decision. That's why it's not easy. It's not why it's cut and dry. Most, as you've said for a long time, Reed, and I agree with you, the reason that there's a lot of things that have never gone solved or have never been something that's been fixed is because there's reasonable discussion on both sides of the aisle, and there's going to be an argument about it for probably until the end of time. And I would say that the city debate of whether or not they should help fund a stadium is probably right down the middle because
I think it's very much going the way of cities are no longer going to pay for
until they pack up and leave.
Correct.
Until they pack up and leave, and then they're going to realize, we made a mistake.
Maybe you shouldn't be blackmailed by billionaires, anyways. Maybe that's not a good way to live. To live.
So it almost seems the Cincinnati Bengals are worth $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion. It almost should be.
They could go winless and still get a big old fat check from the NFL.
Correct. I feel like if you would want to buy an NFL team, similarly to what I believe in the MLB, if you want to buy an MLB team, there should be a clause in there where you have to try to compete. You should have X amount of dollars to your name so you can compete. I think there should be something where whatever the team's worth, add $1 billion. And then you have to maintain the field. I think it costs roughly $500 million over the next 20 years to maintain the field, maintain the stadium.
Right.
Paul Brown or whatever it is, Paycor now. And I do think ownership should be responsible for that. Yes.
What other business works like that? What other business works to where we constantly are footing billions of dollars to billionaires so that their government can thrive, or so that their business can thrive.
It's wild, and I will say, to Trace's point, if my options are chip in with taxes to help the Bengals stay here,
right,
or let them walk away, I'm going to help in, and we're gonna pay it. But like Reed just said, if you're going to use threats and blackmail to get rid of a team, then what kind of relationship do you really have there anyway? I don't think this issue will ever be solved. The owners won't allow it to be solved that way. The owners won't allow just an extra $1 billion added on to their ownership of their team, of their franchise. But yeah, I do think the owners should be responsible for it.
100%.
And it's silly almost to think otherwise.
And if you think that it is a good investment to take billions of tax dollars and build a facility for a business for another billionaire, then I would argue is like, okay, well, let's do that for like something that will actually probably make a little more money. Like let's give Amazon billions of dollars to open up a hub here, a giant hub here in Cincinnati, stuff like that. Like there's better ways to be more economic than sports teams.
I did just happen to look up just this second how much the new Bills stadium is going to cost. And it's a completely new stadium. They're taking down the old one. Its construction cost for 2026, that's when it's going to open, is $1.7 billion. So that's about half of what Mike Brown is, if that's the case.
1.7 billion is what you said to build?
Yeah.
What is the average NFL franchise bring in every year?
Average revenue?
Average revenue, yep.
Well, it would have to be, not to get into the weeds of all this, but it would have to be gross profit.
581 million.
Yeah, and I mean, is that 581 million in actual profit, or is that basically what the team
That's
brought
revenue.
in?
That's earnings before interest.
Yeah, that's not paying out everyone.
Yeah, so we're not paying out everybody. And I mean, you can get into the weeds of this. Economists certainly have a job for a reason. They've made it very clear that they don't believe that ultimately paying for a professional franchise to stay in a city makes economical sense. My only pushback to this whole entire thing is that it always gets put on one county, right? Like it gets put on Hamilton County. And we all know inevitably that if you're in the surrounding county areas, right? And I don't know the county that Newport's in per se in Kentucky.
Well, the reason it goes under one county is because the idea is that the sales tax that would be generated through tourism and stuff like that would pay for itself on the back end. So if you start grouping counties together to pay for things, you're right, it would. But then you're going to have to get into a whole nother weed of, hey, how do we divvy out the money that this stadium builds to the cities, to the other counties that are paying for this.
Correct. It wouldn't work because of that reason. But I mean, what I am saying though is that inevitably the citizens of these surrounding counties ultimately, and again, this is where when you do sports and you're in sports, and maybe if you're listening to this show, you obviously you live and die by sports to a certain extent. Maybe there are times where you get around other people in your life and you realize sports are just not anywhere near as big as you perceive them to be. There's no doubt they have cultural impact, but at the same time, how many people actually do genuinely care if the Bengals are here or not here? I don't know. I don't know what those percentages ultimately look like.